Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing the modern classic, Azul. Azul from Michael Kiesling is a abstract strategy game in which you're trying to score as many points as possible before the other players do so. In this game, you're going to be filling up these various depots, and the number of depots will range by player count. I have these set up for a 2-player game at the moment, but you're going to be setting up these depots and going through, putting out 4 in each of these areas, and players are going to be trying to acquire these tiles. You're going to be doing that with a bit of a drafting mechanism as players choose tiles from the various boards, putting any tiles that do not match the chosen color into the center grid. So for example, once we have this set up over here, let's say we have over here, the player over here is going first, they'll go ahead and choose one of these tiles, choosing those tiles and only those tiles. So perhaps they go ahead and they say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and grab these tiles over here, pushing the remainders over there in center. You're always going to choose the tiles of one color, pushing the rest into the factory grid, and then you choose a spot to put them. In our case, we're going to go ahead and put them over here, which seems like a nice safe spot to put them. We'll explain why shortly. Then the other player is going to go ahead and look at one of these tiles as well and try to choose which one they want. I guess in this case, we'll choose this one over here. We're going to choose this over here and put them down onto our third grid like so, and push the rest into the factory floor. Back to this player over here, and this player should actually have this on the other board because we're not playing on that advanced side right now. We're going to leave this like this, but we're going to go ahead and have this player go ahead and choose another one, and maybe we choose... There's a few options we could choose. We're going to go ahead and choose this one over here, putting these down over here. Let's see how that plays out for us. Marking those over there. Now, at any point, players can take tiles from the center if they so choose, but there's a reason why you don't necessarily want to do so, at least not yet. We'll come back to that shortly. But going back to this other player, the other player might go ahead and go for, I can deny this player that. I could take these. I think I'm actually going to go ahead, though, and push these two. That could be tricky over here. Let's go ahead and grab these two, putting these over here. Now, right about now, this player has another choice, and they can choose how they want to proceed, but given the fact that there's 4 of these in the center, and the other player can choose those as well, they might go ahead and just suck up that extra negative point, and they'll go ahead and take those tiles. So what they're going to do right now is they're going to grab these 4, putting them into their grid, but the first person who takes from the center has to take this one, which means they will go first next round, but they will also get negative points. Back to this player over here, they're trying to choose how to resolve this. They could take this and deny that player there, which I think is not the worst move, so they'll go ahead and grab that. This player is back to over there. They can now choose to take these, but the problem is they'll have to take an extra negative point. You see, when you take tiles, they have to go into a row, and that means these two over here could either fill the bottom row, which means it will not get filled this round because there's no more of the black tiles, or it can go to the top row, which seems like the worst spot to put it, because it can go into the top or the third row, and any overflow has to go to your bottom where you'll start losing points for it. So he's kind of stuck in a hard spot where none of these are really that ideal. The question is, what is the least or most ideal? And I think at the moment, if we take this tile over here, we'll be able to get a top spot locked in. We'll also shove this to the middle, because that way, this player cannot fill that third row with those. The truth is, at the moment, though, this player has to now choose what they want to do. They still have the same problem over here. They could take this black. I think they're going to anyways take these 3 and put them into the third row like so, which is an interesting, potentially risky move. Back to this player over here. They're going to choose these, and actually... they're not going to go for the overflow. They're going to put it down over here, which forces this player into taking that over there, and not a lot of negative points playing out this first round, which is normal for the game. The negative points start to come and accumulate as the rounds go out. But before we refill, let's show you how this plays out now. Once you're done drafting tiles for the round, what you're going to do is you're going to take these tiles, and you're going to slot them in based on any filled rows. So this is a filled row, so that tile will go over there, and it'll score the player 1 point because you score only for itself. So you'll go ahead and go up 1 point. You're going to be scoring for the rows and columns of the way you touch tiles, which means the more things you have on the board, the more points you'll score. This one will go over here, and then this will get pushed off to the side, and again, another point. This row is not filled. This row will go over here, and these will come off to the side, which means another point. So far, only small little points over here on this side, and then we lose a point for this, so we're going to go ahead and go first, but that's going to move downwards, and we'll push this back to the middle. On this side, we're going to get 1 point as well. We're going to get 1 point as well, pushing that off to the side. We're going to get nothing for the rest because those are not done, and then we'll go ahead and refill the board. Let's go through one more round showing you how this plays out, and then we'll get into review territory, endgame scoring, things like that, and talk about the game more. So let's go ahead and get these out over here, 4 in each depot, putting them down, and the score for one more. Again, this player going first because he took from the middle first, taking that last little 1 tile. Let's go ahead and play this out, and now they have a choice to make. So right now we do kind of want to fill these rows, which is not a great round to do so because there's not a lot of black on these rows over here. We could kind of get this over here, but the problem is if we take this, I know full well that if I take these 3 and put them here, the other player will take this 1 and put it here, denying me the full row, which is dangerous. It might be best to go for a safe 2. The problem is this 2 over here, I already have locked in with the red, which means I can't utilize it, which means I'm kind of actually in a very hard spot right now. The safest thing to do might just be to deny him that double. Let's deny him that double by taking this black over here, putting it on that row, shoving these into the middle so he can't take the 2 red. Back to this player over here. This player has the choice to make. Can't take these 3 over here because that won't really help us. None of these others are really doubles. I could go to the center and take these over here, which is not the craziest thing actually. Given the board state, it's actually not the craziest. We're going to take those from the middle, taking the negative point and still fill up that row. Back to this player over here. We kind of want to get these blacks over here, but as soon as we start taking them, the other player might take them. He can't take a black over here, so we're actually pretty safe. So there's no rush on taking the black, which means we might want to just deny him the opportunity to get some of these oranges over here. So I think we'll go ahead and we'll grab one of these over here, putting in the top row, shoving this to the center. Over here, this player is going to go, and we are going to go ahead and deny him right now this before we can get too clever. But if we do that, actually, I don't think we're going to do that just yet. We'll go ahead and do this. It's tricky. We're going to go ahead and do... You know what? I think we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to deny that one over there, taking that. Over here on this side, we need a twofer over here. We don't yet have a twofer. We could take these 3, but that's not great. Honestly, we couldn't put them here anyway. I should have realized that. So maybe taking 3 is not the worst. It's not, but the other opportunities to get the twofer, maybe. I think we'll go ahead and take... We'll take one of these reds over here, pushing these into the center. We're going to push these into the center over here, grabbing that 1 red. On this end, we need some of those blues, and we need some of the yellows. So we'll grab the yellow from the center, tossing it over there. Then over here, we're going to go ahead and grab... We need something that has a double. There's not a lot of doubles. If we take the blue, then he might take the other blue, because he will take the other blue. We could take the yellow, but then he'll take the other yellow, so same problem. So I think we might just take the black, knowing we can go ahead. We want the black down here. So let's go ahead and put this... Let's force his hand. We'll take the black over here, shoving these into the middle. This player will then go ahead and take the yellow. I think we'll take the yellow, locking it over there. On this end, we'll take another black, pushing this down to the bottom, and this player will take both blue. This is where it's going to get interesting. We're going to start seeing negative points in a second, because over here, we're now going to take as few points as possible. We'll grab this other black over here, and this player now has to go, and if he takes any of these, he's in so much trouble. We're going to take this one over here, because it's better that nothing else can go over here. On our end, we'll go ahead and grab these 3 red over here, which means he's going to take these 3 and have to carry them over to his bottom row, where he's going to score negative 8 points for that. Negative 8 points, because these go up in point scoring as you go through them, which means it's a messy row for everyone. Over here, we're going to get 2 points, moving up 2, because again, we have the combination of 2 over here. Over here, we're going to get 1 point for that. Over here, we're going to get 2 points because of 2. And then over here, we're going to get 2 points because of 2. So another 2 over there. And that's our score for this round. On this end, we'll get 2 points for over here. That's going to be 1, 2. We're going to get 2 points for over here. Another 2. Tossing that off. Another 3 points for that 3. 1, 2, 3. This one's going to be 1 point, a single solitary point. These will stay because it's not a complete row. And then we're going to lose 8 points going down to 2 or maybe 3. I don't know if I messed it up over there on that board. And that's basically how rounds of Azul play out. Last thing to cover is how do you trigger the endgame. You trigger the endgame by any player having a full row of any one of these completely covered. Not a column. You need a row completely covered. So if this whole row was complete, and usually it is a top row, but not always, then that will trigger the endgame. From there, you'll also score points. You'll score 2 points for every complete row, 7 points for every complete column, and 10 points for every set of each of a color you have. So if you have all 5 reds, you'll score 10 points. If you have all 5 yellows, you'll score 10 points for that. And that is basically Azul. You're going back and forth, you're drafting tiles from a tableau, trying to fill out your own personal board as you figure out which numbers work out best, how to avoid those negative points, and how to get all that going for you, well, better than the other players do. Which brings us to the review. Starting off with ease of play. Game's incredibly easy to play through, very easy game to dive into. The rules are a few pages. What do you have over here for the rules? These are the rules over here, just a fold open page, so 6 pages total, including front, back, and every little last thing in between. And it's a very easy game to dive into. It's just set up the boards, set set up a variable number of these depots over here depending on the player count, and just dive into taking the tiles and scoring them out. There is that advanced mode we talked about over here where you have a little bit more freedom in your colors and the way those play out. There's still some rules and restrictions around it, but doesn't lock you quite down into the same grid. And then past that is just trying to get as many points as possible. As far as player count, this is a 2 to 4 player game. I have played this on multiple player counts. I only like this game at 2. Only like this game at 2. We'll talk more about that in the review part, which brings us to the review part, which is Azul is a game that I've had for quite some time, and it's a game where I've also tried the various varieties of Azul. You see, this is the game that started it all. This is the game that became the modern classic, that defined this. This and Sagrada came out at roughly the same time, and both games were incredibly well received in incredibly different ways. For me, I like elements of both, but the thing that's interesting for me is Azul came out with Azul, then Azul Stained Glass of Sintra, then Azul Summer Pavilion, and then Azul the Queen's Garden. I've played all of those games, and for me, Azul remains my personal favorite. In fact, if I were ranking these, let's give a little bonus mini review in here. My order in the ranking would be Azul, plain Azul, Azul Queen's Garden, Azul Summer Pavilion, followed by Azul Stained Glass of Sintra as being my least favorite of the trilogies. I have not played all the offshoots. There's Azul Crystal Mosaic and like little expansions you can have to mix in. I haven't played all of those. I've only played the core base games for each of these. And for me, what I love about Azul is I love the degree of screwage that the game has. As a 2-player experience specifically, this game has a high level of screwage as you draft tiles from the various depots, as you try to slot them into your board, but as you're mindful of not just what works well for you, but also what's going to hurt your opponent. You're constantly looking at your opponent's board and thinking through, well, sure, those 3 reds are going to be great for me. They'll score me a chunk of points. But honestly, if I leave them on the table and I take these 2 blues instead, those are still good for me. Not as good as the reds, but that's going to leave them with the reds, and so I have to deny them. They may have to take those 3 reds as negative points, which, as much as it'll give me few points, it might take out 6 points from them, which can be just as impactful, especially if there's another good move at the table. As a 2-player abstract, I find Azul is cutthroat, it's competitive, you're looking at your opponent, you're looking at yourself, you're constantly juggling not just what's good, but also what's bad for the other players, and I find that dynamic lends itself really well to a solid abstract game that is as cutthroat as it is beautiful as it is. I mean, these pieces, these little chonky tiles are absolutely adorable, and not adorable, but they just feel nice. They feel nice to grab, to put on your board, and to load up your own crystal mosaics as you build everything out over there. It's absolutely amazing. And then as a 3 or 4 player game, I find it loses every single ounce of that charm. As a 3 to 4 player game, I find Azul purely devolves into your own board. It becomes significantly harder to play off other players. It becomes significantly harder to react, to adjust, and to try to build your strategy around not just what you want, but what others don't want. And so I find a full entire element of Azul gets cut out when I'm playing it as a 3 or 4 player game. I do not think it's a bad game as a 3 or 4 player game, and I think as a gateway friendly game, which you have an objective, but you're not really trying to be mean, I think it works well at all player counts. But for me, Azul at 2 players has an entire element present, an entire element of screwage that is incredibly satisfying that I find is missing at higher player counts. The other thing I'd mention about Azul is at times the game can feel like there's not enough going on, except, and this is where the caveat comes in, except I find that Stained Glass of Sintra, Summer Pavilion, and Queen's Garden all try to address that, and yet I find myself being pulled towards original Azul more and more every single time. I find that the elements of things that added to the game, that added to the little decision space and puzzle you have set up, those elements are all interesting, and I do encourage you to try these other Azuls, especially if you like any of the Azuls. I recommend you try them all at some way, shape, or form, at a convention, at a friend's house, whatever it is you can do in order to see which ones are best for you. To me, Queen's Garden had the most interesting puzzle, but lacked the pure, simple elegance of these games. Summer Pavilion had a rewarding puzzle, but it was simpler than Queen's Garden, and yet not as simple and elegant as Azul, so for me, it's Azul then Queen's Garden. And then Summer Pavilion's good, but I'd rather the other 2 first. And then Stained Glass of Sintra, even though it is well rated and well liked, to me was the least interesting of the group. It just didn't give me either the puzzle or the complexity, and never really resonated with me quite the same way that these other Azuls have. Overall, I think Azul is a solid game. I particularly recommend it at 2 players. I think at other player counts, it is a good gateway-friendly game with nice chonky pieces and an overall very colorful game, a very simple game, but I think it lacks some of the things that make it really shine when you're playing it purely as a 2-player game. When you're playing it at other player counts other than 2 players. As far as other game recommendations, rating. Let's talk about rating. Overall, for me, Azul is a 4. I really like this game. It's a solid game. It's not necessarily my favorite abstract, but it is pretty, it is accessible, it is nice to look at, it is fun to play, and it has that degree of cutthroat meanness that makes it incredibly satisfying when I pull it out, especially with people who are just as mean and cutthroat at the game. As far as other game recommendations, I'm going to go with all the ones I mentioned so far. Check out any of the other Azuls. If you liked Azul, if you liked any Azul, there's likely elements here that are worth exploring within the other Azuls to see which one works best for you. And then secondly, Sagrada. Sagrada came out roughly the same time, and even though they're very different games, because of the fact that they came out roughly the same time frame, because of the fact they both had colors and they had their own little placement puzzle of how you place things down, they have often been compared, and I understand why. I think they're very different, but I think there's reason enough to compare the two, and you probably will, I shouldn't say that, you might like both of them, but ultimately we'll find out. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.